Knowledge is worth getting, of course. You ever make fun of someone for being too smart?
Yes.
That sounds like insecurity to me. But for the rest of us who are honest with ourselves, we don't make fun of people for being too knowledgeable. The only time we do that is when it makes us insecure. The person in the class who raises their hand and answers all the questions pisses us off. Why? Because it reminds us that we don't have the answers. Now, while that person was learning, we were doing other things that we've completely forgotten about. And now that person gets credit for being in the right place at the right time with the right information. That's a training ground, man. This is a training ground. You're going to find yourself at work. There's going to be some sort of a problem. People are going to be standing around looking for who can fix this. If you're the right person in the right place at the right time with the right knowledge, you're the person who can step forward and say, I have the solution. If some sort of tragedy hits your family, are you the person who's going to be sitting in the corner curled up crying because of this tragedy? Or are you the person who's going to be able to say, I have the solution. Whether it's easy or hard, I have the solution. And you can step into that place and make the world so much better for everybody in your family because you're able to lead them strongly. A lot of the problems that we have in life come from communication or miscommunication. So if I were to assume that he meant, the cat running by, and I said, yes, it's dark outside. And he says, really? Because that building looks yellow to me. Like, that's not what I meant. In other words, there's a miscommunication that happens. Philosophy is designed to clarify things. In fact, you say that with philosophy, clarity is all important. That's what we're seeking to do. Now, we can clarify things to a point that they become really tedious and hard for us to talk about just because of the annoyance that goes with the frustration that goes along with talking about it. Like that question, is it dark outside? What's the it to which you're referring? Oh, but you know what I'm talking about. That's the problem, is that we don't always know what we're talking about. We could be talking about very different things. Like, so when we say fake it until you make it, well, what's the it to which you're referring? That's the important thing. There are some things, by the way, that you can fake until you make it. And there are some things you cannot fake it until you make it. You can fake a resume and get yourself a job working as an airline pilot, maybe.
Oh,
yeah.
I know who you're talking.
Is that where we sit there and go, hey man, fake it till I make it. Thank you for joining us today on the flight. And you're going to try to fly this thing? Say, hey man, I made it.
Autopilot?
Yeah, maybe press an autopilot button or you rely on everybody else, but you're going to find out, in fact we're all going to find out on the news tonight that you did not know how to fly a plane. But there is an opportunity, let's say that, for example, some of you in here are extreme introverts. I am myself an extreme introvert. People don't believe that because of what I do, but I was just talking actually to a friend of mine about this last night, and I was saying, well, what's the alternative? I can go work in a cubicle somewhere, be an accountant or something like that? No. The universe has played a strange trick on me where it made me an extreme introvert and very, very shy, which are two very different things, but I have both of these. And then it gave me a desire to do this thing that I do, which is teach, which is a strange kind of trick to play on somebody, but I figured there must be a reason for it, right? So what do when I come in? Well, I fake it. Hey, good morning, everyone. How y'all doing today? And then I get back, bye. And it's just like soul-crushing. It takes so much to gather that together to say good morning. But you continue to do it anyway. Why? Because I'm faking that. I'm not faking being an airline pilot. But I am kind of faking being an extrovert because it would be very difficult to do this job for anybody to learn anything from me. There was a professor at UCLA in the philosophy department who no doubt had some issues, man. But anyway, he was a very good philosopher. And he would sit there literally on a desk and he would lecture to the class like this, looking down at the ground, and he would just talk like in this volume here. And he would just kind of think about the topic and discuss things with us, and he would never look up. He wouldn't ask for questions, because to get questions, he'd have to look up and see who had them. Once in a while, somebody would just kind of interrupt. Professor? Yes, there's a question. And then playing with his fingers like this and all that. This person was very difficult to learn from. And by the way, this is part of the problem depending on the university that you go to. Some universities are all about researchers. That guy publishes articles in philosophy, so they hire him to teach it. Horrible teacher. Terrible teacher. I never heard anybody ever say, so inspiring. Really developed a deeper love for philosophy. I knew of people who hated the subject after taking it from him, and that's specifics. And these are people who were philosophy majors, and they hated that subject, that specific type of philosophy after working with him. It would have been great if he could have faked it. Although I'm glad he didn't fake it as an airline pilot. So we have to be careful with that. Yeah, it can get you in the door with certain things. Talking to people requires confidence. You can't walk up to somebody and ask for a date with your head down, staring at your boots or your shoes, and playing with your fingernails, and then ask for a date. No one's going to go out with you. You have to fake a confidence if you don't have it. So there are things in life that it is useful to fake, and there are other things that we absolutely should not fake them. And you don't want to catch yourself up in the habit of faking things, because because God forbid, it actually works. And that can be a terrible thing for you. Because if you fake it and it works, what do you do for the next thing? Fake it. Why not? It worked last time, and you can get yourself in this habit of faking it. And the more you fake it, that means the less you have to work at becoming good at something, or becoming great at something, or actually developing real confidence. So hopefully the idea is that if you fake confidence and it works out for you, well, that should give you some confidence. But you shouldn't, again, ever fake being an architect or an airline pilot or anything like that where people can die. As you're driving, please don't fake being a race car driver. Yeah, as much as it's like, I got this. I've seen all the Fast and Furious movies. First off, that demonstrates very poor judgment on your part. But secondly, it's going to make you a worse driver. Don't fake that stuff. So now it starts to beg the question of, like, what's worth knowing? He says you don't get anything worth knowing. You don't get anything worth getting by pretending to know things you don't know. So I guess maybe the more pointed question is, what's worth getting? What are some things in life that are worth getting? Yeah.
Knowledge or experience.
Why? What's so great about knowledge?
Go back to like what you had written down though,
Please.
what's worth knowing.
That last 2 minutes is going out of the video.
I think anything is worth knowing. Like there's some obvious knowledge that you might never use in your life, but what's like if you have the time to learn it, why wouldn't you? It doesn't hurt knowing something. It's anything that you can take in, like there will be no consequences, like bad consequences, if you take in like a piece of knowledge. Like let's say like you take a pottery class. When the fuck are you gonna use pottery? Maybe never, but now you know. For math, a lot of people say like whatever like things you don't use for math. I fucking hate math. I don't want to do it any more than anybody else does. But once you do it, you know how to do it. I think that's what's important.
Curiosity. Anybody in here really good at math and you don't like it? You're good at it?
You love math?
You're not bad. No, I wonder. Because I wonder we have like this visceral reaction against math. I hate math. Why? Like, what's math ever done to you except for fly airplanes and build buildings and help us, cure diseases?
And make computers.
Yeah. What's that?
Tedium.
You're right. Explain.
Tedium is very uncomfortable. I think it's probably why the second reason is, you ever worry about something like unnecessarily?
No.
Yeah, me neither.
Never once in my whole entire life have I ever worried about something unnecessarily.
But I do it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I do that is because for some reason, in some weird way, it gives me comfort to believe that I have some answer, but not the answer. And I feel like that's what a lot of people pretend not to know. That it gives them the comfort of, I know this. I got this.
Yeah. Because there's something there that we don't like not knowing because it makes us uncomfortable in the world. Because when you know stuff, it makes the world less dangerous. It's one of the reasons that we like to know stuff. The problem with knowing stuff is that we actually have to learn stuff. And then how is it that you know what you know? And think about it. How do you know what you know? School? I don't know what that means. How do you know what you know?
Through experience.
What does it mean by experience?
Experience by seeing it firsthand.
So you see it,
Yes, you hear it,
you hear it,
you touch it, unless you want to go to jail, but
No, he's going to insist on it. Taste it and smell it. Yeah, so there are 5 senses. So, and then that covers everything from school. So you go into a class, somebody's talking to you, you hear it. But I guess the question gets begged of, well then, how do you know that these things are accurate? Like I saw it myself. You ever seen something and you were mistaken about what you saw? Many of you say, nope, never. So you've never gone swimming before? You've never put your arm in the pool and seen your arm bend in the water? Does your arm really bend when you put it in the water? No. Now you might say, oh no, that's because of light refraction. But that's not the point. It looks like it does this. And when you were a little kid, you didn't know about any of that stuff, and you just put your arm in there and it looked like it bent. So sometimes the things that you see are inaccurate. It's an inaccurate portrayal of the reality of the physical world. And then sometimes you've been walking down the hallway and you thought you heard your name and you turned. Yeah. So you were mistaken about what you heard. So our five senses are not entirely reliable. And that tells us that the things that we know, therefore, are not entirely reliable. We can be mistaken about all kinds of things. And that's not even taking into account like biases and prejudices that we enter into a situation with. Now, if you're expecting to hear your name, you're going to hear your name. If you're expecting to see something, you're going to see something. Was it this class? I showed you guys the pictures of the castle, the black and white castle. Right, I'll show that to you before we move on to it. It's necessary for what we're going to learn. But you're going to find that we enter the world with expectations, and the things that we experience, sometimes it has gaps in what we're seeing. We fill in those gaps with our expectations. For example, if you see a black and white picture, but you're thinking it's in color, you're going to see color. And I'll prove that to you in just a short bit. So, it's something important there about our knowledge systems. So you ask the question, what's worth getting? Maybe knowledge, but that's really hard to get. And even if you get knowledge, you might not even know that you have it. In fact, you may not have knowledge, but you think you do. In other words, obviously there's times when our knowledge is wrong. We're just inaccurate about things. You know, I think about it just, sometimes it amazes me. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes it amazes me. The amount of stuff I tell you guys, and how rarely I ever hear you guys fact-checking a thing I say. Why would you not? So that tells you one of two things. Either you don't care about what you're hearing because you don't plan on remembering it anyway, so you're not really seeking knowledge, in which case I genuinely don't understand what a lot of us are doing here. You don't have to be here this often to pass, to graduate. And if that's all that we're after is this little tiny piece of paper, and then we're going to complain later in life about how we don't have opportunities. That's because you don't know what you don't know. When are you ever going to have to know pottery? I don't know. Can it be useful? Yeah. How? I don't know. But obviously people do it. I think I told you guys last week how I got this job. Yeah, because I knew who was standing on second base in the 1988 World Series. When would you ever have to know that? I don't know. Does that mean you should go out and find out who was on second base in the 1988 World Series? No. But it just means that there's a piece of information that goes into the head and you just go, huh, and you store it away. Why? It might be useful later. I have no idea. Math, when am I ever going to have to use math? I don't know. And if you don't learn math, by the way, neither will you. Because you're going to come across opportunities in life where you can use math, and it'll never occur to you to use math, because you won't know any math. In other words, you have to have the skill in order to know when and where to apply it. It isn't like you're going to get somewhere and go, oh, I can't figure this out, I wish I had better math. No, you'll encounter a situation and math will never even occur to you. Whereas somebody else would come along and say, oh, I can apply math to this, and figure things out. But again, we don't know what we don't know. And it's just a strange thing to me that we enter into these real, absolute, massive time saps of our life, and we don't get anything out of it. But think about it. You're in this room 5 hours a week. I wonder if you're getting 5 hours a week of something out of it, or if 4.5 hours of it is just an absolute time sap. It's not just here. It's all of your classes. Think about that. 6 classes, 30 hours a week. I wonder if you're getting something out of your 30 hours a week. I mean something real, something lasting. Something that's worth getting. Worth getting. Meaning that to get something means to hold on to it. When we go and we look at some pictures, those things are gone after a while. So, it's interesting for that second or two, but then it's gone. It's not, you haven't gotten anything. And then I'm not saying that we shouldn't do those things. I'm not saying we should or shouldn't do anything. I'm just asking that question. Are we getting anything worthwhile? If you go to work, and you're working, I don't know what minimum wage is anymore, but let's say you're making minimum wage and you're there for 6 hours and you're like, I hate this job, it sucks. So is that just like a massive 40-hour time sap for you? Do you get nothing out of those 40 hours? I mean something that's worth getting out of those 40 hours? I get money, It's $15. Are you selling your life for $15 an hour? Genuinely, you're selling your life for $15 an hour. And that can make you angry, like, yeah, I am. So what should you do? Quit. No. Get something worthwhile out of being there. Get a skill set. Develop people skills. Learn as much as you possibly can. Bless you. So that when you go off from there, you have more to offer the next employer, so that if what you're there for is money, you can get more money out of it. But you're going to have a deeper skill set than you had before. You're going to know things. How do I interact with people? How do I, whatever, work a cash register, whatever. Whatever it is. Everywhere that you are, you can get something out of it. Or you can just sit there, put your hand in put your face in your hands and go, God, I'm so bored, this sucks. Here's your controversial idea for the day, your unpopular opinion for the day. If you're bored, guess what? It is your fault. Boring people are bored. Because there's always something to do. There's always something to learn. There's always some engagement. There's always some experience. The universe, forget the universe. Forget the world. Forget the city. The classroom around you, the people around you are so deep and rich with experience that if you're bored, it's simply because you're not going out and getting anything that's worthwhile. Instead, you're sitting and doing something or not doing something that's not worth your while. And the reason that this bothers me so much, and it bothers me for you, but this is one of those few things that bothers me for you, because you're selling yourself short. You're so much more than just a boring person who would sit there and be bored. You have the ability to be so fascinated with the world around you with just a little bit of curiosity and a little bit of ambition. And those two things would improve your life vastly and dramatically in ways that you can't even possibly imagine right now. They'll make you, if you're curious, you're going to learn things that are going to make you so much more interesting. And I mean interesting to people around you, which means you're going to meet and interact with more interesting people. Plus, you'll be more interested in the world around you. You won't be so damn bored all the time. In fact, you're going to start to realize sooner than later, it's not that there's nothing to do, it's that there's too much to do. Yes? You're going to realize that it isn't that there's nothing to do, it's that there's too much to do. And then you're going to find yourself with the opposite dilemma. You're going to have 100 hours of stuff that you want to do, and you're only going to find yourself with 15 hours to do it. And then you're going to have to start to prioritize the things that you want to do in life. And that becomes like almost a real tragedy because there's so much to do. And this is one of the reasons that reading is so valuable, because it gives you the opportunity to live more than one lifetime. Because to have to live only once is, I think it's one of the hardest things that you're ever going to have to do, is to live only once. And when you realize that you live only once, that's what becomes so tragic, because there's so much to do. And you only gain access to that stuff by figuring out what's worth getting. Knowledge is worth getting, of course. You ever make fun of someone for being too smart?
Yes.
It sounds like insecurity to me. But for the rest of us who are honest with ourselves, we don't make fun of people for being too knowledgeable. The only time we do that is when it makes us insecure. The person in the class who raises their hand and answers all the questions pisses us off. Why? Because it reminds us that we don't have the answers. It pisses us off because it reminds us that while that person was learning, we were doing other things that we've completely forgotten about. And now that person gets credit for being in the right place at the right time with the right information. That's a training ground, man. This is a training ground. You're going to find yourself at work. There's going to be some sort of a problem. People are going to be standing around looking for who can fix this. If you're the right person in the right place at the right time with the right knowledge, you're the person who can step forward and say, I have the solution. Not just at work. At work, it's within your family. If some sort of tragedy hits your family, are you the person who's going to be sitting in the corner curled up crying because of this tragedy? Or are you the person who's going to be able to say, I have the solution? Whether it's easy or hard, I have the solution. And you can step into that place and make the world so much better for everybody in your family because you're able to lead them strongly. You don't get that by not having this thing right here. This is a training ground for that. That person who we're pissed off at in class because they have the answer when we don't, that's the person that we're going to be hugging if they were in our family when there was some tragedy and they had the answer that we didn't. And they're able to solve it for the rest of us. Be that person who has the answer. And by the way, for that person, and by the way, I know that I think most of you probably are this person. You have the answer, you just don't say it. Well, then what's the point of having the answer if you don't say it? What's the point of having a car that you don't drive, or a plane you don't fly, or a friend you don't talk to? What's the point of having knowledge that you don't share, or wisdom that you don't apply, or the answer that you don't tell us? Might as well not even exist, man. So, I guess first things first, figure out what's worth getting. You can populate this list. I'm sure that we're all going to have very different lists. And then but you'll get those things by pretending to know things you don't know. Whatever it is you don't have that you want, you need to go find out. Go get it. Well, you don't have to do anything. I don't have to do anything except for stay, white, and die. But if I'm going to lead a meaningful, ultimately productive and meaningful and lovable life, we have to figure out what these things are. Figure out how to get them, and then go get them. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?